Good evening and welcome to today's news review. You live on Mamos Radio. I'm your host Rohi Konatige. Thank you, listeners. You live on Mamos Radio. I'm your host Rohi Konatige, proudly sponsored by Unique Energy in the Gambia. Please stay tuned.
Mamos Media. Atele nada modu be alafuna modu nene boja sangarango oh nene afana be Oslo de no engodia.
Mamos Radio on Mamos Media. It is Tuesday, 15th of December 2020. I am Nene with the nation's top headlines coming to you live from Oslo, Norway. Listeners, today's Mamos Media headlines. Former CDS Tamba narrates his role in post-coup attempt panel. Government recognizes significance of MSMEs to economy, Vice President Toure. Councillor Lambas, Kerouan Area Council for not doing their work. And Brikama Area Council launches a toll-free number. Listeners, let's review these Mamos Media headlines in more detail. Lieutenant General Lang Tombong Tamba, former Chief of Defense Staff, on Tuesday told the Truth, Reconciliation and Reparations Commission that he was removed as a member of the panel charged with interrogating suspects of the 2006 attempted coup after he recommended to former President Yahya Jammeh to release Sheriff Mustafa Diba, former Speaker of the National Assembly, who was detained and being interrogated as a suspect of the coup attempt. In his testimony, General Tamba said former President Jammeh was not happy with his advice that Mr. Diba was not implicated in the coup attempt and therefore did not agree with his assessment. Answering questions from the lead counsel, General Tamba confirmed that the junglers were part of the interrogation panel at the National Intelligence Agency premises in Banjul. He, however, said their only role was to collect the detainees from the Maltu prisons and return them after the interrogation. He denied that any of the suspects were tortured to obtain confessions from them. Read the rest of the story, written by Usman A. Marong, on our website. Vice President Dr. Isatou Toure has said that in the Gambia, micro, small and medium-sized enterprises contribute approximately 20% to the GDP, adding that as a government, they recognize the significant contribution and untapped potential of MSMEs to the economy. Vice President Toure made these remarks on Monday at the Sir Dawda Kairaba Jawara International Conference during a forum organized by the Ministry of Trade, Industry, Regional Integration and Employment with support from the Division for Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs and the United Nations Development Programme. Addressing the forum, Dr. Isatou said the government firmly believed in private sector-led growth and as such, they were ready to implement recommendations made at a policy implementations forum in the post-COVID-19 era, promoting MSME formalization. Read the rest of the story written by Cherno Omar Bob on our website. The councillor for Essa Ward in the North Bank region, Keba A. Jallo, has accused the Kerouan Area Council of not doing their work as expected. Speaking on Sunday during a radio program with Nyomi FM, Mr. Jallo accused the KAC of not following up on a memorandum of understanding on youth empowerment he had signed with a municipality in Senegal. Quote, I am very much disappointed with the Kerouan Area Council. They are not doing what is expected of them. Imagine, I have signed an MOU with MBAO municipality since last year on community development and youth participation through sports. I laid down all my plans and presented it to the KAC, but they never got back to me, unquote, lamented Mr. Jallo. He remarked that the Senegal's economy is bigger than that of the Gambia, and therefore he said it is important that, quote, we try to partner with them so that they can help us, unquote. He said the objective of signing the MOU was to bring development to the doorsteps of the people of his area. However, he said he had not been able to realize the objectives of the MOU because the KAC has failed to make the necessary follow to ensure that it was implemented. Read the rest of the story on our website, written by Sheriff Saidi Khan. Our final news headline review this evening. The Brikama Area Council on Monday launched its official toll-free number during its first edition of the annual Stakeholders Conference held at Kairaba Beach Hotel. With its mandate under Section 48 of the Local Government Act 2002 to provide the needs and welfare of the inhabitants of the area, the Area Council staged its first Stakeholders Conference with the theme, quote, building a responsive, open and proactive council, unquote, to enhance the quality of life and the social cohesion of the inhabitants of the West Coast region by embracing the best practices of good governance, socio-economic justice and citizen-forced service delivery, and the vision of becoming a vibrant and environment-friendly council that provides the right conditions for the effective involvement of various actors in the economic and social life of the region. In his opening remarks, the chairman of the Brikama Area Council, Sheriff Sonko, expressed his delight for the gathering and indicated the importance attached to enhancing effective engagement. Read the rest of this story written by Mohamed El Bojang on our website. Listeners, that was the Mamos Media headline reviews this Tuesday. Have a pleasant evening.
Thank you, Nene, for today's news review. Listeners, you live on Mamos Radio. Please stay tuned. We'll be right back. Radio.
National newspapers' front pages from the UK this Tuesday. Almost all of the newspapers lead on the news that London and parts of the southeast England will be placed into the toughest COVID restrictions and rates. The Times quotes Health Secretary Matt Hancock as saying there was not a moment to spare as he put 11 million people into Tier 3. Mutant COVID is the headline on the Metro, which says the new variant of the virus has been linked to an exponential rise in infections in the southeast. In addition to the capital being plunged into the toughest tier, parts of Essex and Hertfordshire will also move into Tier 3, notes the Daily Telegraph. The government's decision means more than 60% of England is to face winter under the toughest curbs, notes The Guardian. With the virus surging in parts of the southeast, Prime Minister Boris Johnson has been scientists fear the planned easing of the rules for 5 days over the festive period could further fuel the new COVID variant. New strain and more pain is the Daily Mirror's headline. The Daily Express splashes on the fears over the new COVID strain, but its front page also features a photo of Boris Johnson in a phone conversation in the back of a car, noting that the Prime Minister said Brexit trade talks were still difficult. The Daily Star focuses on news that thousands of school children in London have been sent home from schools amid rising infection levels. The paper says it comes after ministers had said schools were safe. Thank you, listeners. That was the UK national newspaper's front pages. Please stay tuned. After the break, we will take a closer look at the Daily Express and Welcome back, listeners. Let's take a close look at the front page of The Times with the headline, New Strain Feared to be Driving Up Virus Cases. 11 million people in, as Health Secretary Matt Hancock suggested, Christmas shoppers avoid the centre of the capital, according to the paper. The paper also quotes the Health Secretary as saying there was not a moment to spare as he put the 11 million people into Tier 3. It also reports that the virus variant originated from Kent and that some scientists have suggested masks should be worn in London's busy streets, an idea taken up by the city's mayor Sadiq Khan. But the paper questions whether there's scientific evidence that face coverings will work, saying any decisions on them are political. Details of that story can be found on page 2, column 3. The Times also reports that social media companies will face multi-billion-pound fines if they fail to protect children and adults who use their services under a new duty of care the government has announced. Details on that story on page 6, column 1 of The Times. The front page also carries a story on the Kremlin hit squad who tailed Alexei Navalny for years before his poison attack. A specialist hit squad within Russia's FSB security service trailed the Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny on dozens of trips over 3 years before poisoning him with a nerve agent, an investigation has claimed. Bellingcat, the British-based investigative journalism website, identified what it said as an 8-man team of agents involved in the attempt to murder Mr. Navalny, 44, in August. It said it is believed that the FSB operation was approved at the highest echelons of the Kremlin and was launched in 2017 after Mr. Navalny announced plans to run for the presidency. Read more on that report on pages 34 and 35. Also featured on the front page is a royal tribute to Duchess of Sussex Meghan, who is pictured with the caption, "The Duchess praised the quiet heroes of the pandemic in her first appearance since revealing she had a miscarriage." She also backed a startup selling super lattes. The paper calls her Meghan the investor. Read more on that on page 6. Listeners, we now take a look at the front page of the Daily Express, which also leads on the fears over the new COVID strain, with the headline, Fears over new fast-spreading COVID strain. 34 million people are now living under strictest lockdown rules, the paper reports. That story continues on page 4. Also featured on the front page of the Daily Express is a serious-looking Prime Minister pictured with a mobile phone pressed to his ear, looking over his glasses, under the caption, Brexit trade talks still difficult. Turn to pages 8 and 9 for details of that report. Thank you, listeners. That was the UK's national newspaper's front pages review with me, Zainab Njaiba. Stay tuned to Mammoth Radio for the rest of our news program. Thank you for joining me. Have a very pleasant.
Thank you, listeners. You live on Mammoth Radio. Thank you, listeners. You live on Mammoth Radio. I'm your host, Rohi Konetige, proudly sponsored by Unique Energy in the Gambia. Please stay tuned.
Assalamu alaikum baɗigol kan Mamus la redi bumballa kontalta ka kibaro mi fotandalle wato wati bin kana wala fotandalma janin ko ke fonsi mawlu tentu ani kafulu min ya lon ko kan sembentu ya wato wati non dunta pour ka kibaro di wol kono tredi gamla kafuba be tentu lambe jayile be dogu kendo mena ka ramadu be tentula ani Mamus la do kula men be gambia bantalamba fule ala barka bake albe doku mena ka mul kalamatande kuna mekering o kamala mbafulali la barka bake semen kedron ngadum kibaro nyi fango kono President Barrow men ketala yamar lati ka faya dusano ay kumandro ke ñu watulu ko UDP la nyaton ko men keta honorable Ousainou Darboe ako anyanta ke fonyo ka foko aka tumiro men ke Adama Barrow la mukute me alon ko aya nekuya ay wol kibaro bobi ako President Adama Barrow me alon ko anin UDP la nyaton ko e sudata nyola num bakale bidon tumo men Adama Barrow president o abenu UDP la parti nyinto ako o nyama kulme alon ko dunte tema anu kananyi meni fotain o mukute me alon ko ake temo anu aka kulmen ke aka gena tinyale anu ata dusano ata kera molto me alon ko asudia bata president Adama Barrow lale anu akata yamar reality ni nata politiko la fanala akwa man kontane handumanding men keta UDP la nyaton kodi memo honorable Ousainou Darboe ay audio nyi men deda nyi watulu ay akanyi WhatsApp group to nyi bantabato pour que moli yamari ka fo ko yefonyo pour que president ka fo iba danilale waran ka fo masakunda danilale kantum niya juben president ka kodo nyimmen ni aka fo aka mulu so kodo nyimmen na o mkutume ya lonko imanya na kadana wala ako sako ni nata ako ay atudusano ako ay kumulu men fo membe denni nyina ka fo mulu kana president lamoy ware kana sembentu ya ware ka fo ba danila pour que makoy fengodo waranke sembentu ya ako mo kana woke awoni dusano akoya adimi bakele andun ni mukutume ya lonko aka manya na ke honorable Ousainou Darboe na takinke aka asen WhatsApp me alon ko molu ke la moyal ako niya juben ay membanke wolomu Ousainou Darboe ay memfo wolom ako na fulu waran fengome me alon ko president kawole ni ako anyim fonu yaya jamele anu ngaba continental la ba fola ate president Adama Barrow ako da president Barrow aka fama man kene soto wara man dula soto mi ya lonko president Adama Barrow be muna fankan wala la purasi molu dema no menia sulo nyin kanin ako aka fengol nyum men ni ka ke sembentu ya wala nyum fenet mi ya lonko aka dimmen la wala fengo tamu mole le lempol ni la julolu men fengolu men jo o kodo nyin atake muna fan wala la amanta komen ka gambiano le mako wara be de makan para ka menke wala wala nyantote kandunga kodo men dila wala tamu amanka de president otati kibar bunda nyi men banke wala mu standard la newspaper te anise continuete ko ni molu me ya lonko wala lombo mararing ninata ka sira fengulu wafi waranka luwa londa kola Gambia menkeda Drones Enforcement Agency ka fo men lota pour ka koni noma ka keleke ka dandir kala e konyin tumo temboto ye molu muta me ya lonko ol fangbe do wala o luwa bunda nyinoto menkeda basse la magistrate la kiti bunda ba nyinto yol modul muta ani menkeda DJ Fulati anin musical me ya lonko wala kela musical ni kankula ila kekendo bala men ka kankula roke ko fana da mol kono ye men muta men keda yo ara tundo ni mafola anu ila muto sababu sunta ko tai me ya lonko e kam muta molu bulu e ke maboda men e ko la muto sunta wala la ye je katele yesu nyaro nyinke membe kiti bunda nyi fawdo e ko moli yenyin men tumi biringi mbego nyimbe kekan e bebe nyi watolo e be basela police station olto ane kisi ro kuma sela me alon ko e be woni kisi kan kajo ko alata nyaadile anu mod koy men sotata wayin ko nyum banke ako kula me alon ko aku sotoro namu ay nyum banke point la newspaper iko ñun lañu nga betela wato menna magistrate court la ñun dinkiraje ñi men tay iko ye mul men tumi ye ñun la tay mi alon ko ka time muta mulu bulu ke maboda men iko ye wala tay anu ñin keta arjumo sumanda juno wato leyna tayin dulañindo tayi ani do kulal men ya lon ko le ben kiti bumba nyinto wol nata commandro ke pour la mulsi ben pour kana do kola wato le nata kala mudako bunda nyin office do be je wala bunda nyimbe katarine ko beriyo jike dron ya lon ko ka tay ñunu mabo dame waran sire fe wulu ñu mabe dame e ko jele kati andu mulu biringo keta e continenta ware mulu sasi pour isi ko ñin kisi no man katabake kiba bunda men sa fe wala mo point sa newspaper de e ko kiidio ñum fanan continenta men keta kawurda tundo yin to ñi arjuma tambila men keta december karo 11 tang anin killing e ko e mo me yalon ko ya tumi e nata abula e ko ya joko luwa ñi men lafta kamuta ya joko luwa e silo men la kamanta ni silo la anu men keta kiti la ñinte wala ya joko ya muta men na manke dalilti ko la la nata abula nkeba sek me yalon ko atamu sering digal mole moroñing o ma atamu wala nom abu akola ko no mabakele ikona da tumi mi yalon ko ala nyantole mu poliso nyin ko ya mutale kantu nyin batora kande birade findita abala doku nyin ke kan o kola ni nyin nata dunyola anu yala doku nyin tarindi wala asumudo sababu sunta o fanana e ko biriya ñin ko ñin kisi sate ñin to kawur me yalon ko akere sate de kabe ne me ker mot ali me yalon ko abe Upper Salum Central Region ma fa ñine da e ko jani so me ko ñin kisi waram biriya ñinin ka fo kiti ñin biraka na dati fo abe sonnal kam bay toñero lo ke ako aman son aman toñere ke o ko lalen kiti na da continue e mo saba kuma ne me ya lonko wol be ke da sedolati birin kido nyimbe ke kan an biriya kido nyike fo kum fa dulalo me ya lonko akata ni november karo tel mo an woro lawyer Sirif Kumba Job me ya lonko atlemu yemen samana atlemu wala lawyer nyinte ay nyinje ko yin sambana men kan pour ka kitindi amanke luwati amanta nin silola ande Job ay contineta ko ala be do ko kam meye abe kam meye loya la ako abafula kiti la ko pour ye nyin ya bula katabake kantu ye menu banke ene ye kul men sude nyin kono kuti je me yalon ko atata ni silola o kolale na tabula ko ki ma ye kes ni men ka kan amanta ni silola kibar bunda men safe wala mu fore yalla newspaper de baade mo ngina mo kibaaro men futana be tamana ka futan dalma na be tada kuma solo no ni nga fa ma fa kun saunda al salo na hana mariana so dam al nal baade mala min marom dol ka kiyam zamba flane mara fanya tonto
Rohi Kanedabo, our country director and marketing manager in the Gambia. Also to our Mamus News Desk chief editor Mr. Suleiman Dabo, news editor Lamin Sanyang, Mamus reporters on tonight's news review Usman Marong and Emel Bojang. Special thank you to the Nenes Fans Club. Thank you, listeners, once again. We'll be back tomorrow, 8 p.m. GMT. On that note, we say good night and bye.
Vamos.